Well, one of the number one questions I get as the lead pastor at Connexus is this. What does the name Connexus mean? It's not difficult, it's not deep, it's just practical. What does the name Connexus actually mean? And maybe you're new to us at Connexus and you're not aware of what it means, or maybe for you, you're someone who's been around Connexus, but you've never heard exactly what it means. So I'm going to tell you. Connexus is two words together, kinetic and nexus. Nexus meaning gathering, kinetic meaning motion. We are a community, a gathering, a community in motion. We're a community in motion. We're on mission together as we gather and as we go. In fact, that's how I like to explain it. I say to people, Connexus is who we are as we gather and as we go. That when we gather together, we invite the whole city, all of the community, everybody across Simcoe County, people who are watching online, to join us. Everyone's welcome to join us as we gather. Bring your skepticism, bring your doubts, bring your questions, bring your hurts, bring your hangups. We are Connexus as we welcome people as we gather. And we are Connexus as we go, as you go into your life and I go into my life when I interact with my neighbors, my friends, when you interact with your coworkers at work, we're Connexus as we go. See, the truth is that the church has never been about buildings. It's always been about people. And that's what Connexus is all about. In fact, the gathering looks different these days, doesn't it? We're all gathering right now online. We've got small groups that gather in people's homes or online through the week. As we gather together, we are Connexus. It's different. We're not meeting in our physical locations because we know that given the current restrictions and limitations, it wouldn't be a great experience. Definitely not one I want to invite my friend to. And we want to keep people safe. But we're gathering online. Now, the gathering looks a little different. Small group gatherings, some of them in person, some of them are online. They look a little different. But we continue to move forward as a church. And then we are Connexus as we go. One of the things that we say is people in our lives aren't going to know that Jesus is for them until they know that we're for them. And our cities aren't going to know that people are for them, that Jesus is for them, until they know that we're for them. We're Connexus as we gather, and we are Connexus as we go. But when it comes to being for people, when it comes to being Connexus as we go, when it comes to being in the corner of people, when it comes to being a church that's in the corner of our community, what does it look like in the midst of a pandemic? What does it look like? What does it mean to be for the people around us in a pandemic? What does it mean to be in the corner of your friends, your neighbors, to be in the corner of our city as a corporate church? What does that look like? And it's a really important question because we're living in a difficult time. We're living in an unprecedented time. I have some neighbors that I don't see the way I used to, because they're at home more, they're self-isolated more, they're working from home more, so we don't interact with each other as much anymore. How can I be for those people? And in addition to that, we've got people that you work with, that you don't see them in the hallway, you don't see them by the water cooler, because you see them online, on Zoom calls. So it's different to get in their corner in a season like this. And as a church, you know that things are different for us. What does it mean to be for the people around us, for the community around us in the midst of a pandemic? That's a question that we've been asking for the last 6 months. And I think that Jesus shares something that's incredibly helpful in this area. He shares something that speaks right into this for us. It's challenging, and I think also it gives us something very practical. We're going to look today at Matthew 5 verses 13 to 16. Matthew 5, verses 13 to 16. Now, prior to this, what happens is Jesus shares something that we call the Beatitudes. They're like the values or the behaviors that he wants around the kingdom that he says is coming, that he's building, and the kingdom that's coming right now on earth. It's part of how he wants us as Christ followers to live. It's incredibly powerful. It turns a lot of thoughts that our culture has upside down. You got to check that out. It's just before this. And then he says, now, here's what I want to tell you about sharing those values. Here's what I want to tell you about sharing who I am. Here's what I want to tell you about how you're going to share about who I am, about this kingdom that I'm bringing, about the reconciliation and the forgiveness and the wholeness that I can bring to people's lives. This is how I want you to share it. And he puts that in Matthew 5. You see that, how we're going to share it in Matthew 5, 13 to 16. And he says this. Now, it's interesting as he says this, is that if you're not a Christ follower, or you wouldn't call yourself a Christian, and you're joining us today, you're going to see, for those of us who would call ourselves Christians, what really makes us tick, what moves us forward as a church. So this is what he says. He says this. He says, you are the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the earth. He uses the image of salt, the metaphor of salt, to explain who we are. Now, why salt? Well, because salt is incredibly useful. We can't live without salt. Salt can be used to preserve meat before refrigeration at this time. Salt is something we use to season our food. Back when he had shared this, salt was something that people would use to fertilize, to fertilize in farming or in planting. They would use salt as a fertilizer. Salt is something that I use on my driveway so that I don't slip. Salt has so many uses. It's an incredibly useful thing. It's a helpful thing. And he says, you're the salt of the earth. That as my followers, you're helpful, you're useful, you're the kind of thing that people want to have around. You're the kind of person that people want to be around. Because when they hang out with you, when you invest in them, when you spend time with them, you're just someone who helps them in their lives, who helps them move forward in their lives, who brings good things to their lives. You're the salt of the earth, he says, if you follow me. But then he says, but what good is salt if it has lost its flavor? What good is salt if it's lost its flavor? Now, we can debate today whether salt can or can't lose its flavor, but that's not the point. Salt without saltiness doesn't make any difference. It's just dust. He says if salt loses its flavor, can you make it salty again? And then he says this. He says, after he says this, he says, next slide, it will be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. It'll be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. That salt, if it loses its saltiness, is worthless. It doesn't have all those uses. It doesn't have the ability to help us in so many ways. He says, as people who follow Jesus continue to be salt in the lives of the people around you, don't lose your saltiness. And then he uses the image of light to say the same thing. He says this. He says, you are the light of the world. You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. I mean, you can imagine at this time, it would be incredibly dark all the time because they had no electricity. That you would walk in the dark, that you would live in the dark, unless you had some kind of light, you had some kind of lantern. I mean, imagine being lost in the dark at this time because there's no street lights. And you're walking through the countryside and you turn the corner and you're lost and you see a city on a hill lit with light. Man, that would be so hopeful to you. It would bring you hope. It would bring you joy. It would bring you a sense of peace. He says, that's what you are to the people around you. As my followers, you're the light of the world. You bring hope to people's lives. You bring encouragement to people's lives. People who don't know who Jesus is know that you're the kind of person that brings hope into their life, that you're the kind of person who brings encouragement into their life. He says, as my followers, that's the kind of people I want you to be, people full of hope. Because we've experienced hope. But then he gives us a caution. This is what he says when he gives us a caution. He says, no one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket. He says, no one hides the hope they have. That's what he's saying to us. Don't hide the hope you have. Don't hide the joy you have. Don't hide the encouragement you have in knowing me. He says, instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. It's useful to everyone. You want to shine that light to the people around you. And then he talks about salt, he talks about light, and if you're still saying, Jesus, I'm not actually sure what you're getting at, he explains it. He lays it right out for us right here. This is what he says. He says, in the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see. Let people say, hey, man, she's the kind of person I like to hang out with. He's the kind of person I like to have in my life. I mean, they're just a great friend. They're just a great encouragement. They're just incredibly helpful to me. There's someone who cheers me on. There's someone who in my corner, man, this person is someone that I want to hang out with, that I want to follow. Let your good deeds shine out for all to see. And he says, so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. So that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. That when people see that you as a Christ follower are the kind of person they hang out with, they can't help but see that there's something different about you. Another way I think to put this is how we would say it at Connexus is people won't know that Jesus is for them until they know that we're for them. People aren't going to know that Jesus is for them until they know that we're for them. You know, there are so many people in our community, in the world around us, who think that God would be against them, that if they walk through the door of a church or they watch church online, that they might get hit by lightning. They think that the church is just against everything. And we want to be the kind of church that's for people because we know that Jesus is for people. But people aren't going to know that Jesus is for them until they know that you are, until they know that I am. My neighbors, my friends, your friends, your coworkers, they're not going to know that Jesus is for them until they know that you are for them. Until they know that we are for them. But here's the thing. Here's the challenge. The challenge is, what does this look like now? I mean, this is a challenging thing for us in the midst of this pandemic. This is the thing that I think Jesus is saying to us in this passage, in Matthew 5. He's saying to us, hey, don't let your light go out. Don't let your salt get salty. Why does he include that part? Because I think that's the temptation for us right now. We experience fear. We experience unknown. We don't know what's going to happen next. And so it's so easy, it's so tempting for us to turn inward and to lose our saltiness, to turn inward and to hide our light and say, you know what, I'm just really worried about my family. I'm just worried about what the future is for us. There's such a temptation for us as Christ followers to start to turn inward. To start to turn inward and to start to care more and more about ourselves and less for other people. But as the church, as followers of Jesus, we're called to do the exact opposite. When it's the darkest, we need to shine our light. When it's the darkest, we need to be people of hope. We don't want to hide our light when the world feels this dark. When the world feels this dark to the people around us with all that's going on in our world, as Christ followers, what we shouldn't do is give in to that darkness and give in to that fear and give in to that unknown, but instead to turn ourselves outward to the people around us. This is when the people in our community need us the most. This is when the people who you know, who don't have hope, who don't know who Jesus is, need you the most. This is when they need you in their corner. But it's different kind of times. It's challenging to do because the world doesn't quite work the way it used to. And that's why I think we need some creativity. This is what I want to share with you. Why we are for people doesn't change. We continue to be for people because Jesus is for them, because we want people to know Jesus. That's always going to be the case for our church. That's always going to be the case for us as Christ followers. But how we are for them sometimes needs to change. How we're for them sometimes needs to change. Let me give you an illustration of this. I mean, let's say this tea light is an example of how you used to be for your coworker. You used to see them at work. You used to hang out with them in the hallway. You used to be a really great friend to them, but now you only see them on Zoom calls. Maybe the way you used to be for the people around you was you would help them out with yard work, with stuff at their house. You were a good friend to them, not turning them into a project, but the posture of your heart is someone who cares, someone who's salt, someone who's light, someone who's a friend. But maybe you don't see your neighbor the way you used to. Maybe you don't see that coworker the way you used to. And you have to think about creative ways that you can be for people in this time. For example, maybe for you, you're going to make a meal for someone. You wouldn't normally do that. But that's something you can do now. You need to change the way that you're for people because the time has changed, the culture has changed, the world around us has changed. So you're going to change how you're for people. Why you're for them doesn't change. You want to point them to Jesus, but you're going to do it differently. Maybe you're going to think about this fall. You're going to think about Halloween. You're going to think about September, October. You're going to think, man, what's a unique way I can be for someone around me? Maybe I can drop off a pumpkin spice latte for the person down the street, that neighbor I haven't seen in a long time. Maybe I can invite someone out for a socially distanced coffee. Maybe they'd be comfortable with that. Maybe I've never really called that person. I would normally see them at work. Now I don't see them. I'm going to call them now. I'm going to check in on them. Maybe in your workplace, this blowtorch is, some of you use a torch like this where you work. I clearly do not. But maybe in your workplace, you can find a creative way to be for somebody in this time. Maybe somebody at work just needs a word of encouragement. Some of you wouldn't normally really have a relationship with, but man, they're struggling in the midst of the isolation they're experiencing. I love this birthday cake. This to me is a symbol of celebration. Maybe you've got a friend or a neighbor or a coworker whose their birthday just isn't going to be what it normally would be. And you're going to send them a card. You're going to drop off a gift. You're going to text them and say happy birthday. I mean, there are multiple ways that a flame can be used to produce light. It gets back to our point. Why we are for people doesn't change, but how we are for them sometimes needs to change. It sometimes needs to change. We're experiencing this as a church as a whole. We want to continue to be a church that's reaching unchurched people. We want to be the kind of church that unchurched people love to hang out with. We want to be the kind of church that continues to be for the people in our community. But it's different now. And about 10 weeks ago, I sat down with our team and I said to our staff team, we need to think about how to do this differently. We're going to have to try some different things over the course of the summer and just see how they turn out. And I want to share some of these with you so that you can be encouraged by how you're making a difference, and as well that you can be inspired to be creative in how you're for the people around you. One of the things we talked about was, okay, who needs somebody in their corner? We talked to our local partners, and they were in pretty good shape, food banks and shelter. We got them a few things. The Lighthouse needed some masks, and we bought those, and we did a pizza party for some clients, whatever they need. But the group we talked to that really needed somebody in their corner was local business owners. And so we said, let's get in the corner of 8 local businesses, 1 per week, and let's do a business buyout. We're going to buy out a certain amount of their product that they can give away for free on Connexus. Then we said to the owner, this is what we're going to do. Not only are we going to buy it out, but we said, we know the people of Connexus. They're going to get behind this. They're going to show up. They're going to spend money in your business. They're going to invite friends to your business. They're going to share this online. And business owners couldn't believe it. In fact, there's one business owner I could hardly convince because they said to me, well, there's got to be a catch. I'm like, there's no catch. And you showed up in an incredible way. Many of you did. And I just want to say thank you. Thanks for going to the coffee shop, going to the cookie place, going to the ice cream place, getting in the corner of these local business owners. So many of them have sent us thank yous. I just want to share with you one business owner. This is Renee and his wife Tracy. Renee's actually a COVID survivor. And they sent us a note and said this: thank you so much for helping us out this week of all the weeks that needed help. This was it. We needed someone in our corner, and it was you. That's what they're saying. They needed someone in your corner, and it was you. You got in their corner. In fact, I was at one business, and they said, we had to buy a second smoothie machine because there's so many people coming. We've had all the business owners really have said, you know what's amazing about the people at Connexus? They never take the free item. They always pay for their item and pass the free one on to the next person. We've seen that so many times. I mean, they're so appreciative of what you've done. And here's something really fun. At the Creative Bean, there are a bunch of Connexus people I heard that ran into each other that all showed up there at the same time. And as they were talking, a woman said to them, hey, are you from Connexus? And they said, yeah, we attend Connexus. And she said, my family moved to this area. We've been watching online, but we've never met anybody from Connexus. You're the first people we're meeting. They didn't meet them in one of our physical locations. They met them at the Creative Bean. It's amazing to see the stories that God begins to write. So then we started to hear from young families. That was another group we heard from who needed somebody in their corner. Young families who were saying, I want to invest spiritually in the life of my son or my daughter. And Connexus is providing great stuff on Sundays, but could we get something special midweek and something that occupies our kids because they're driving us crazy in all this isolation? And so Shauna Lester and some of our team around Next Generation and Family Ministry, they said, yeah, we think we could do something. You know why? Because we're for the next generation. We want to see them grow up with a faith that lasts. In fact, we know that the number one thing that you see in the life of a child who grows up with a faith that lasts is the influence of their parents. Their parents are their number one spiritual caregivers. We thought, how can we get in their corner? And so we had a team of volunteers and staff who put together a kids club. They put together a kids club and for ages 4 to 10, and they said to these parents, hey, sign up. We didn't know if 10 parents would sign up, 20 parents, 2 parents. We had no idea. But what we saw were so many kids interacting with this. In fact, you were for 132 kids. Those of you who volunteered, those of you who give financially, who are part of the mission here. And we had so many thank yous from parents. Here's just one of them. This parent said this. This was so well done and fun for everyone. It was not stressful, which made it something even parents could look forward to. Parents and kids, think about this, excited to get together to learn about who God is. And this is what they say. They go on. They say, the kids made so many comments this week about what they've learned about God and faith. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to you for financially moving this mission forward. Thank you to you, those volunteers who've put this together. Thanks for getting in the corner of these kids so they could grow in faith alongside their parents. So then we said, okay, who else can we get in the corner of? Who else can we be for? And in a meeting, Christine Birch, who's on our team, said, there's one group that we know is really going into a difficult time who we could be for. And that's teachers. And we know it's difficult right now for teachers. I used to be a public school teacher myself. It was challenging when I did it. I can't imagine with a mask or with protocols and physical distancing. It's a challenging thing. And we said, well, we can't get in the corner of every teacher across Simcoe County, but we can get in the corner of Sun. So I want to share with you what we did just this week. Check this out.
Hey Connexus, I'm excited to share with you something fun that is happening at the church today. This fall, we know that many kids are heading back to school, but that also means that teachers, educators, and school staff members are heading back to school as well. That means they're making tons of tough decisions to try and figure out how to host our students well, and we want to encourage them. Connexus is for teachers. And so this is what we decided to do. We wanted to pull together some gifts to encourage those school staff members. So today at the church, we've been pulling together these gift baskets. Each classroom teacher at one of 3 schools that we've chosen, a school in Barrie, Midland, and Aurelia, is going to receive this gift basket full of practical things that teachers tell me would be helpful in their classroom this fall. We've got things like granola bars or hangry helpers to help our kids as they return. We also have pulled together little gifts for each staff member in the school. It says right here, Connexus is for you. And we've had volunteers making masks. They made 150 masks. We've got gift cards so that these educators can get fueled for the fall. Some coffee gift cards, and we also have some chocolate. I understand that teachers cannot get through the fall without chocolate. So Connexus, thank you so much for being for teachers this fall. We've got a team of volunteers that have been working all afternoon. Why don't we go see what they're up to? We are at Cundles Heights. This is the last school that we're delivering gifts to today. We are super excited to show these teachers what we've got for them.
Oh, that is
And then
awesome.
there's some stuff for the classrooms.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've been thinking about educators.
Yeah.
We think about
Oh, thank you.
Your staff. We're
Yeah.
praying people.
Yeah.
And we have been praying for your team.
Aw,
And
that's sweet.
we just
Thank
want
you.
you to know that we're in your corner. And
Okay.
we're just hopeful that this token will just remind your team that there's people that are rooting for them this season.
Absolutely. They're going to appreciate it, aren't you guys?
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Isn't it great amazing that as a church, we had the opportunity to get in the corner of 146 teachers and staff. We also provide classroom packs to over 70 classrooms across 3 schools. Incredible to have the opportunity to be for our local community. Now, that's not something we would normally have done at local schools. I mean, why we did it doesn't change. We want to continue to be Jesus to the people around us. But how we're doing it has to change. Now, as we headed into the summer and over the course of kind of the spring, we really encourage you to do something different as well. Something that may have been a little bit different for us as far as our Sunday morning experience goes. We said, hey, we want you to be sharing what's happening online on Sunday morning because your friends are online, my friends are online, your family's online, my family's online. Let's be sharing our Sunday morning services so that people have an opportunity to access them. And many of you have been sharing them, you've been liking them, you've been writing Google reviews. In fact, over the course of this summer, when you compare last summer's online and physical attendance compared to this summer's online attendance, when you compare the two, even counting the most conservative way possible, we had 22% more people joining us this summer. We've been able to be for 22% more people. So here's the thing, methods will change. Methods will change, and they should change. But our mission never changes. So what about this fall? What about being for people this coming fall? Well, this is what we're going to do. We're looking ahead to the next 8 to 12 weeks. Now, we're working beyond that, of course, visioning beyond that, but we know COVID could change things. So we wanted to make a short-term plan over the next 12 weeks to really be for people this fall. And I want to just share with you a little bit about it. You're going to hear more over the coming weeks. This is what we're going to do. The first thing is we're going to continue to be digitally inviting. We're really a digital-first church right now. And let's be continuing to share, to invite people to join us, to share the content that you're hearing on Sunday morning, to be thinking about what would be helpful to someone in your life who needs to know that Jesus is for them. I mean, just with the growth we've seen this summer, as I said, we've had a starting point group over the course of the summer that we wouldn't normally have hosted, people who have never been to a physical location. There's so much opportunity in digitally inviting the people around us. You never know who's going to check it out, who's going to watch, and what God might do. And then also, before I get to the next thing, Carrie's got a great series coming up next, which is a great one to invite someone to. You're going to hear about that a little bit later. Then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to be connection-oriented. We don't want to just grow, but we want to connect people as we grow. So we're going to be launching 8-week online groups. If you're not in a group, those launch at the end of the month. You're going to want to register for that group launch, these online 8-week groups, and invite a friend, invite a neighbor to join you along the way. They're looking for connection. They're alone. They're looking for community. And then we know that some of you and some of your friends, maybe they're looking for personal opportunity to gather with people personally, face to face. And that's why we're going to be hosting small and mid-size gatherings where you can gather with people face to face in a safe way. We've just hosted 2 nights of worship. We've hosted one, another one's coming. Those are both full. We're going to host another one moving forward. We're also, you're going to be hearing about the date this week, we're going to be hosting a night at the drive-in in Oro. It's going to be a physically distant night, but we've got room for lots of people, so you can invite friends, family, neighbors to join you, and you can, of course, come as well so that you can see people. We know that some of you are ready for that, and you're looking for that. So we're going to continue to be connection-oriented. Watch out for that. And then we're also going to be community focused. We want to continue to be for our community, continue to be in the corner of our community. You're going to see in October us do some targeted food drives. But then there's also another opportunity I want to share with you. We've had an opportunity in October to actually, in one day, put together over 15,000 meals for our local partners and Indigenous communities in Northern Ontario. And we think this is an incredible opportunity to be for people in this season, people who need food. And so you're going to be hearing more of that. We've found a way really to do that in a safe way where you're going to have an opportunity to serve for a period of time. And as many, many volunteers come for certain shifts, we're going to be able to put all of those meals together. And that's just getting started. You know, our mission continues. The methods might change, but the mission continues. Digitally inviting, connecting people, being for our community, an opportunity to make an incredible difference this fall. What about you? As your Connexus as you go, how can you be for the people around you? In fact, this week, that's what I want you to think about this week. This week, look at how can you be creative in being for people in your life? Your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers. We're going to have this conversation at my house at the kitchen table. Who can we be for? How can we be for them? We know that we need to be creative, but how can we do it? How can we shine our light in different ways? In fact, today we're going to be posting a blog post that I wrote online with some ideas about how you can be for people in a simple way. Because we don't want 2020 to just be about pandemics and fear and unknown when we look back. We want 2020, as we look back, to be the time when the church showed up. We want 2020 to be the time when you're talking to your friend and they say, 2020 was the time you were an incredible friend to me. Your coworker says, 2020 was the time you kept me encouraged. 2020 was the time someone says to you that you got in my corner. Maybe somebody says, hey, 2020 was the time where I finally said to you, what's different about you? And you said to them, it's my faith in Jesus. What if 2020 was a time that many of our friends, many of our family, many of our neighbors look back on and said, I met Jesus in 2020. That only happens if we choose to be for the people around us. Now, in a moment, we're going to reflect on communion together. Communion to me is first and foremost is something that Christ followers have been reflecting with for thousands of years, and it's an opportunity for us to remember that Jesus died on the cross and rose again, and the forgiveness that comes with that. And if you're someone who would call yourself a follower of Jesus, we invite you to join us in this as you reflect on the Jesus that has changed you, because there's no one and there's nothing that changes lives like Jesus. And to come to him and ask again for forgiveness and thank him for what he's done. And so you've got bread, which is a symbol of his body broken on the cross, and the cup, the grape juice, whatever you have around your house today, as a symbol of his blood shed. But it's also a reminder that as we partake in communion, that we're not to keep this a secret, but after we're done at the table of communion, we get up from that table and we go and we share it with the world around us. It's not something that's meant to keep a secret, to be kept a secret. Let's continue to be salty. Let's continue to shine our light. Let's continue to look outward. I'm going to pray for us, and then we're going to participate in communion together. God, I come to you today, and we thank you for the gift of your Son, Jesus. Jesus, your death on the cross and your resurrection have changed lives for thousands of years, and they've changed so many of our lives. As we participate in communion today, we come to you and ask forgiveness. I ask forgiveness for the times that I've turned inward when I should have turned outward. And pray that as we move forward from today, that as Christ followers, we would be known as people who are for people. We pray this in your name. Amen. I want you to gather whatever you have for bread and juice today. And I want to read from 1 Corinthians, and we're going to start with the bread. And this is what it says. It says, on the night when he was betrayed, the Lord Jesus took some bread, and he gave thanks to God for it. And then he broke it in pieces and said, this is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Let's take the bread together. As we said, that the bread of symbol of God's body broken for you and for me. And now we'll take the cup. And it says this, in the same way he took the cup of wine after supper, saying, "This is the new covenant between God and his people." Forgiveness, eternity, a relationship with him. He says it's an agreement confirmed with my blood. Do this in remembrance of me as often as you drink it. Let's drink together. And then he says this, "For every time you eat this bread and you drink this cup, you're announcing the Lord's death until he comes again." May our choice to participate in communion today remind us that we want to continue to announce the hope that comes in his death and resurrection until he comes again. Let me pray for you. God, as we look ahead to the chances that we have to be for people, may the rest of 2020 be a year that isn't remembered because of pandemics and unknown and fear, but a year where you showed up in the lives of the people around us and that you used us to do it. That we would get a front row seat to seeing your Spirit lead in change and transformation and restoration, and most of all, people discovering you and a relationship with you. And we pray this in your name. Amen.